أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والله جعل لكم من أنفسكم أزواجا وجعل من أزواجكم بنين وحفدة ورزقكم من الطيبات، أفبالباطل تؤمنون وبنعمة الله أفبالباطل يؤمنون وبنعمة الله هم يكفرون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. No doubt that the most important step that anyone takes in his or her life is when they enter the so-called golden cage, or they enter the marriage institution. Why? Because it is considered to be the most intimate and close and personal relationship that any person can ever get to. There is no other relationship can be described as close as to the marital relationship. It is so close. Even the relationship between the parents and their children, the daughter or the son to his or their father or mother, is not considered as powerful and intimate as much as the relationship between the wives and the husbands. There is no relationship can rival the marital relationship, both in extent and in depth. Therefore, we can say anyone who lacks marriage, or let's say is deprived from getting married in the future, he will be facing a tremendous problem. This problem is not only on an individual level, rather it can be on a social level. And it can have a variety and wide range of troubles: social, ethical, health-wise and medical, moral problems, and psychological and emotional problems. Why? Because human beings by nature are considered to be social animals, social living things. They cannot live in seclusion. They have to be bound with someone. Therefore, anyone who's not, in this line or is deprived from getting married, he would eventually lack he would lack a serious component in his life. In today's talk, brothers and sisters, I will be talking about the advantages and benefits that we reap from the marriage in first part. And in the second part, hopefully we will allude to the reasons of the problems of marital life. You see, not every marriage is considered to be successful. There are problems. Why there are problems? And hopefully we can introduce some remedies. That is after your big and loud salawat. When we examine marriage carefully, we see that marriage answers by default and by nature answers two fundamental and universal human needs. The first one is suffices the physical and sexual desire for the human. That's number one. The second one, it is considered to be a peace, settling, and an agent toward tranquility and settlement and peace among members in the society. Now, you may say that this could be a wishful thinking. Why? Because if you say that marriage has sufficed the physical desire of a humankind, then why there is so much indecency out there? Despite the fact that almost 50% or more of the population are married. They have spouses. Yet we see acts of indecency and lewdness is rampant. Plus, we don't see any peace and tranquility among many societies. So this could be a wishful thinking when we say that marriage could address those two important points. You see, brothers and sisters, the problem is not with the marriage itself. Rather, is how you adopt marriage and how you look at marriage. We say that tentatively, marriage will be able to solve those two problems, address those two important needs. It is dependent upon me how I implement this one, how I go about to solve my problems. You see, God in the Holy Quran talks about the prayers. He says the reason for the prayers. What is the reason of our daily prayers? It is clearly and specifically said in the Holy Quran. It says, إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ تَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنْكَرِ. That truly the prayers prevents from vice and act of indecency. Anyone who performs the prayers should be entitled to prevent himself from vice and act of indecency. Now you would ask, anyone who performs the prayers, then he is abstinent, he abstained from act of indecency? If so, then this earth would have been heavens. Despite the fact that God has said the prayers will allow people to abstain and to cleanse themselves. So the problem, brothers and sisters, is not with the marriage or with the prayers. It is rather with me, the one who performs those things, or how I would look into marriage and how I consider it to be that important, or it's sacred or not. This is the important thing. The first issue that I said is that marriage suffices, or it addresses the need of our physical desires. Probably without any exaggeration, if we say that we are living in an era that is you have not seen in the past and during any other time, as much as pressure toward the human being that exploit his sexuality and his physical desires, as much as in the era that we are living today. In every turn, in every corner, you can see that. It is very obvious. There are large corporates and international financial conglomerates whose their aims is to transform a human being, this mankind, to a sex-raised animal. Only, for the sake of fulfilling their physical desires. Regardless of age, regardless of gender, regardless of ethnicity and religion. You see, it is worldwide. Everywhere that you will go, you will see that those are, the agent of indecency have worked their way through every single society, every single community, no matter how that community is conservative or religious. You see, a while ago in Denmark, there was a department store, clothing store. The owner of this clothing store decided that upon one day, probably that day was a Black Friday, to give his clothes all for a free, provided whoever enters the store has to be completely naked. That is the condition. Whoever comes in should not be wearing anything. Now you can imagine the long line that people have made in order to enter the store. Maybe the only one who didn't show up was the queen. She didn't go there. You see how the exploitation takes place? The problem is not only on the practice. The problem also comes when they rationalize it, when they rationalize the philosophy and the intellectuality of sexuality based on what Sigmund Freud has said. Sexual revolution, without any limits, without any boundary, without any regulations. Just have it at any time, anywhere, by anyone. As long as you are adult, consenting adult, then that's fine. And that's the unfortunate thing, brothers and sisters, that we see in the Western societies. To what kind of extremes those societies has gone. In the same time that you see this kind of extreme, you look at certain religious institutions who push, fakely, unfortunately, toward the propagating celibacy, and complete abstinence from physical desires. When the Catholic Church propagates and advocates such kind of thing, you will end up having a result that all of you, you've been hearing, the scandals that have faced the church. Why? Because the premise was based on a bogus claim that a man, a human being, can be celibate, can be abstain himself from the physical desires. Out of 110,000 priests to the Catholic Church, 4,500 have been accused of being a pedophile in the past, decade or so, from late 90s, mid 90s until now. 4,500 who've been publicly, meaning in papers, have been announced to be, a pedophile. I'm not talking about those, priests who cheat with consenting adults. We're talking about some criminal activity like this one. Only the U.S. dioceses have spent up to 2009. They have spent $2.6 billion just to pay as a compensation for the damages to the victims. And how many of those parishes have gone and declared bankruptcy? Plenty of them. Why? Because again, they were on the extreme. Either extreme in this side for a sexual revolution, just have it open at any cost, there is no boundaries, there is no limit, or on the other side tells you no. You should be spiritual. You should not contaminate yourself with, with agents of decency. Because woman is considered to be, unfortunately, if you study perfectly, the Catholicism tell you this is the agent of debauchery is woman. Therefore, do not contaminate. Anyone who would like to stay holy and sacred should abstain from having any kind of physical desire. Now, what did Islam do? Islam came to modify the things, to regulate this animalistic behavior. Has said that I will give answer to both. I will give the answer toward your physical desire, your animalistic desire, that will suffice it, and to your spirituality at the same time. Therefore, a human being has taken this animalistic desire, has transformed it to make it a humane, to make it something sacred and holy. That's why the Prophet of Islam, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, what does he say? Says, "An-nikahu sunnati, faman raghiba an sunnati falaysa minni." Has it transformed the same act that the Westerns do without any boundaries, without any regulations? The Prophet of God has transformed it to be part of his tradition, to give it sanctity. Through what? Through the institution of marriage. One day, one lady, her name is Zainab al-Attara, meaning she was selling perfumes and things like that, who was a middle-aged lady, was married. She came to the wife of the Prophet, Salama. Salama, when she looked at her, and knowing that, she sells perfume and makeups and things like that, but she was not wearing any, You know, like some of our women who put, 5 kilos of makeups. This woman was very simple, modest. The wife of the Prophet, peace be upon him, was surprised. Told her, why don't you put makeup? What's wrong with you? No ornaments, very simple, very modest. Is there a problem? She said, yes, my husband has turned away from me, has abandoned me. 24 hours he's staying in the masjid, praying. Therefore he have abandoned me. When the Prophet came, Salama told the story to the Prophet. So the Prophet came to this woman and told her, if your husband knows لو علم ما إن زوجك لو علم ما له من الثواب لو أقبل إليك لما تركك. If your husband knows the rewards that God has saved him, when he comes and approaches you, comes to you, then he wouldn't have abandoned you. The Prophet told him, there is a thawab? For this kind of animalistic act, God will put rewards? What kind of rewards, Ya Rasulullah? Is there any reward? Tell me, what is that so I can go and tell my husband? The Prophet said, ثَوَابُهُ كَثَوَابِ الشَّاهِرِ سَيْفُهُ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. His reward is same as that guy who has his swords to go to defend the Islamic territory. The same reward that that man gets, the same reward that this husband gets when he approaches his wife. In another hadith, the Prophet telling his companion says that إِنَّ لِبَضْعِ أَحَدِكُمْ لَأَجْرًا. Just the fact that you be with your wife, God will give you rewards. Some of the companions were laughing. They said, أَحَدُنَا يَأْتِي شَهْوَتَهُ لِيَجِدَ ثَوَابٍ. That we do our physical desires, in this naturalistic desire we gain thawab. The Prophet said, أَرَأَيْتُمْ إِنْ أَصَابَهَا فِي حَرَامٍ أَلَيْسَ لَهُ عِقَابٍ. If this guy does not spend it in the right path, if he spend it on the wrong way, deviate, wouldn't he get punished? In the same way that he gets punished if he deviates, commits adultery, for example, God would reward him if he spend it in the legal ways. Therefore, Islam came to transform this activity, this animalistic activity, to give it sanctity and holiness through one single path, and that is marriage. This is how Islam respects the institution of marriage. You see, brothers and sisters, in our ages, when do we reach maturity? Usually, boys and girls reach maturity at the age of 12, 13, more or less. That is when they reach that age. When is the time that they get married? Usually, statistics say back in the previous century, meaning in the 1900s, it used to be 25 to 26 years. Nowadays, probably 30 or more. Let's say that it is 25 to 26 years, meaning that this boy and this girl, how many years they have to wait until they get married? 10 to 12 years. What do they do with themselves? Let's be honest. Let's speak frankly today. What do they do with themselves? Despite the fact that everywhere they turn, they see the exploitation in their eyes. If they go to the school, they see it in their eyes. If they go to the library, it's in front of their eyes. In the cafeteria, in the newspaper, in the magazines, in the internet, in the market, everywhere they face the exploitation of their physical desires. It is like someone that you keep hungry for 10 years and then eventually you bring pork to him, tell him there is no halal meat. What would he do? Then if he eats from this pork, you say, oh my God, you're a bad person. You see, the parents should understand this fact. We are living in a free society. In a society that the children, the youth can acquire anything at any time. They have two ways. Either they become deviant or they suppress themselves. Keep it in themselves. If you keep it in yourself, what will happen? Eventually, you become an explosive. or deviate. The poor parents think that the boy is sleeping in the, in his bed. They don't know that he put 2 pillows and covered it with a blanket and he's outside, having good time, thinking that, our children do not understand those things. Therefore, Islam does not only advocate for marriage, it advocates for an early marriage. Say, go and get married as soon as possible. This is a hadith from the Prophet, peace be upon him. It says, أَيَّمَا شَابٌ تَزَوَّجَ فِي حَدَاثَةِ سِنِّهِ. Whoever, a youth, gets married in his early time, early age, عَجَّ شَيْطَانُهُ. His shaitan, his devil start to scream, becomes restless. Why? He says, وَقَالَ يَا وَيْلِي عَصَمَ نَفْسَهُ مِنِّي. That this guy has prevented himself, have secured himself from me. Getting married at early age, meaning that you have secured yourself. You have secured the life of your son and your daughter from many problems. One problem is the sexually transmitted diseases. Brothers and sisters, do you have an idea that one of those sexually transmitted diseases, called syphilis, 17% of American population have inflicted with this disease? 17%. I'm not talking about AIDS. You know the percentage of AIDS? So far, since its discovery in 1980, up to now, there are 21 million people who have died due to the cause of AIDS. And there are 80 million people waiting for their line in the next 10 to 15 years to die from what? From AIDS. Why? Where did AIDS come from? Isn't it coming from the sexually transmitted, activities? Being promiscuous? This kind of problems that we're facing today. Especially for those younger generations. Open your eyes, brothers and sisters. You see? Sometimes you run into fun, you think this is fun, but you never think about the consequences. What kind of consequences you will face? Something that will destroy your entire life. You will become miserable. You see, those diseases basically are viral diseases. A viral disease does not come from the body, always stays in the body. No matter how many medicine you take, what kind of medicine you take, it destroys it, but not to the point that it's completely eliminated. Always it's recurrent, comes back, like malaria. You see? And the body never gets completely cured from those diseases. Always recurrent. Once finds an opportunity, comes back again. That's why it says go get married as soon as possible. Save yourself. This is number one. The second thing, brothers and sisters, that the marriage brings harmony and peace and tranquility. God has said in the Holy Quran, it says, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُم مَّوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. God has created harmony, love and affection among yourselves. You see, a human being by nature is a social being. Cannot live by himself. You cannot find, a human being, no matter how important that person or how patient that person is, living by himself in a cave. Cannot. Human cannot survive. There has to be someone that they share their lives with. When I share my life with someone else, with my spouse, then I tell her, I share her my concerns, my agonies, my problems. Those will give so much psychological advantages. You see, haven't you seen that when you run into trouble, you want to stop anyone and tell him about your trouble? Or you go to your parents to tell them? Imagine that you don't find anyone. For 1 week you cannot tell. What will happen to you? You go crazy. It is naturally that a human being is finding their mates to discuss, to talk, to bring their concerns. Therefore, you see those people who have a large circle of friends, they're very sound and wise and very, good personalities. They have very good personalities in societies. Why? Because having mates, having friends, having confidants is part of our human nature. We cannot live without them. The Prophet, peace be upon him, Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad, says, استكثروا من الأخلاء فإنهم ينفعونكم في الدنيا والآخرة. The more friends you will have, the better it is. Why? Because they will help you in this life and in the hereafter. In the hereafter, they will help you. Why? Because there is a narration from the Prophet. He says that any faithful that God sends him to the heavens, in the heavens, he will remember his friends. Some of his friends, let's say, are not faithful. They have been, destined to go to the hell. He looks at them, he goes to God and begs him and say that this guy was my friend, was my buddy in that life. Can I make intercession in his behalf? Intercede in his behalf and bring him to heaven? He said, yes, you can take. So he goes and take that person and brings him to heaven. So having more friends will help, not only in this life, in the hereafter. More importantly, brothers and sisters, marriage is remedy for our moral troubles, for our ethical troubles. If you do any survey, look at those criminals who commit crimes, misdemeanors, felonies, attacking others, murdering. When you check their status, their marital status, almost the majority are singles. They don't have family. They don't have wives. Why? Because what does a single lose if he commits a crime? When they have the psychology that they're not going to lose anything, then they commit any kind of a crime. Even reckless drivers. Go look at those reckless drivers. Those who get the highest numbers of citations and traffic citations. When you check on them, you see that those are people who are single. And by the way, the insurance premium is higher for those who are singles. The first question that the insurance agent asks you, are you married or a single? If you tell him married, then he will give you some discount. If single, it goes up. Not only for the car insurance, for life insurance is the same. For medical insurance is the same. Why? Because a study has shown that those who are singles, their life expectancy is shorter than those who live with wives and with children, or with spouses and children. This is scientifically proven. Based on that science, on that fact, you see how insurance acts. It increases the premium or decreases the premium. Based on that, brothers and sisters, marriage is a solution to a society. When you have less criminals, when you have people who, wise enough to think before they commit something wrong, that they have family waiting for them. They have children waiting for them. It would be very good for the society as a whole. Not only to the individual, not only to the family, to the entire family. And the last important reason for marriage, or benefit of marriage, brothers and sisters, you see, when you look at yourself, how many cousins you have, how many aunts and uncles you have, how many relatives you have, those are based on what? Those are based on marriage. If it were not marriage, then how do I know that this guy is my cousin? This guy is my uncle, for example. Or this guy is my relative or my clan member. It is through marriage that God has brought harmonies into societies. God has says, Ya ayyuhan nas, inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha. We have created you out of male and female. And then وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا. We have made out of you tribes. You became into nationalities, tribes, and blood relations. Blood relations is based on what? If there is no marriage, if there is no boundary, then there is no meaning for cousins. There is no meaning for, blood relations. It is those that have brought peace and harmony to society. So you can say one most important reason of getting married is to raise pious and righteous people, to have good progeny. It is those progeny who will serve you. It is the progeny who will save your tradition and save your religion. Therefore, you see Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi has says, تناكحوا تناسلوا فإني أباهي بكم الأمم يوم القيامة ولو بالسق. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, get married as much as you can. Have more children as much as you can. Why? Because when you have more children, you are increasing the numbers of those who say La ilaha illallah on the face of this planet. And that is what the Prophet wants. That's what God wants. Which one is better? Someone who says the La ilaha illallah to be on the face of the planet, or those who don't care? Those who are atheists, they have no idea where they came from or where they are going to. Therefore, Islam, not only for the peace in society, or for the medical treatment, or health-wise, or emotion-wise, it is to have righteous and useful members in society that come in the form of a progeny. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Therefore, brothers and sisters, you see that the narrations, the Islamic literature came to emphasize on this fact. From Quran to the narrations of the Prophet and the Imam, always emphasizing on the importance of marriage. Notably, the verse in the Holy Quran that talks about marriage, what does it say? It says this, وَأَنْكِحُ الْأَيَامَ مِنْكُمْ وَالصَّالِحِينَ مِنْ عِبَادِكُمْ. Before I translate this, whenever there is an order, there is an injunction, divine injunction, ruling from God to the humanity, always directed to individuals themselves. When it talks about fasting, it says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصَّيَامُ. O people who are believers, fasting have been assigned on you. When it talks about the prayers, it says, وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةِ. You do the prayers. Always, whenever there is a command that God wants to send, talks to the people directly. Tell them you do this or you do not do this. When it comes to the marriage, God does not talk to the individual, young man or young woman. No, He doesn't talk to them. To whom He talks? He talks to the elders. He says, وَأَنْكِحُ الْأَيَامَ مِنْكُمْ وَالصَّالِحِينَ مِنْ عِبَادِكُمْ. When you find singles with a boy or a girl, make them get married. The talk is not directed to the young. Why? Because naturally, a young man and a young woman, they cannot. It's difficult for them. The expenses, their financial status does not allow them to do it. Who's the one who can do it? The parents, the elders in the family, the tribal leaders, the big ones in the family. Therefore, God talks about them. Tells them it is your duty. It is the duty of the parents, brothers and sisters. It is not only the duty of the... I've asked many of our brothers, tell him, why don't you make your, help your son get married? He said, yeah, I'm ready. Anytime he asks, I'll be happy to help him. No, no, no. You don't wait till he asks. It is you who to initiate. It is you who to go and find the suitable wife for him. And the same thing goes for the lady, for the girl. Don't wait until a suitable husband, a knight will come somewhere on the horse and bring in, a torch with him to come to help your daughter and to find her own future. It is your responsibility as mother, as father to go and find suitable mate, suitable spouse for your daughter. It is not haram. We know that the Prophet, peace be upon him, the way that he got married when his wife, Khadijah al-Kubra, she has proposed. She has sent signals to his uncle, Abu Talib, that I would like to get married with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa. What is the problem? You see, brothers and sisters, especially if you find someone good. Nowadays, finding a person good is like a rare commodity. You cannot find it. If you find such kind of person, you should act upon it. You should take that opportunity to bring them close. Go get acquainted with the families. Here are a couple hadith. The Prophet, peace be upon him, has said this: "Man adraka lahu walad." If one of you guys, the matured, you started to have a boy or a girl, and that child became mature. وَكَانَ يَسْتَطِيعُ تَزْوِيجَهُ وَلَمْ يُزَوِّجْ. The man or the woman, both, they could have helped the guy to get married, their son or their daughter to get married, but they didn't. ثُمَّ أَحْدَث. And that child commits a sin, act of sin. كَانَ شَرِيكُهُ فِي الْإِثْمِ. Then he becomes partner in his sins and in his mistakes. On the hereafter, whatever son has made of crimes, that will be duplicated. One will be handed to his father and mother, and the other one is to himself. On the contrary, the Prophet, peace be upon him, says this: ثَلَاثَةٌ يَسْتَظِلُّونَ بِعَرْشِ اللَّهِ. There are three kind of people who take refuge in the shade of God on the hereafter. You know, on the hereafter, on the day of judgment, there is absolute darkness and heat. At the same time, it's heat, sweltering heat. So there should be a shade that you secure yourself. Now, one of them, أَحَدُهُمْ مَنْ أَعَانَ مُؤْمِنًا عَلَى الزَّوَاجِ. One of those guys who take refuge in God's shade is someone who help his brother or sister to get married. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Now you would say, okay, you know, you've told us about all those problems and how wonderful to get married, to make, you know, this planet piece of heaven. But in reality, it is not. I mean, where did you see that marriage have eliminated poverty, have eliminated sexually transmitted diseases, have eliminated psychological problems and crimes? Can you show me? Where is that? So it's either a hallucination or it does not exist in our planet. It should be somewhere else. You see, brothers and sisters, the problem, where does the problem lie? In spite of, I mean, if we look at the divorce rate, here are some numbers. Let me share it with you before we move on to see what are those divorce rates that we are talking about. For example, the highest country that has the highest divorce rate is called Belarus. It is 68%. Then Russian Federation comes at 65%. Then Sweden 63%. Eventually US, which is number 12 in the, worldwide, it is 49% divorce rate. Meaning every two marriages, one will end up in divorce. 50% will get divorced. United Arab Emirates, 46% divorce. Malaysia, 36% divorces. And this one, according to sociology professor at the State University of New York, his name is Dr. Ilyas Bayounis. He says that divorce rate in Muslim community in North America is 31%. Meaning every three marriages, one will end up in divorce. In California, it is 37%. Does not talk about Dearborn, Michigan. You're lucky. Now, these are the facts. Now you tell me if marriage has solved those problems. Why people tend to get divorced? Some people, those who live together, cohabitants, you ask them, why don't you get married? He said, we don't get married because we don't want to get divorced. The minute that we decide to get married, at that time we decide to get divorced. Where is the problem, brothers and sisters? You see, the problems is that us, it is not the marriage, it is not God, and it is not the planet. God is our creator. He's the one who has created us. He's the most benevolent, the most merciful entity that we have ever encountered. His mercy and love is beyond any recognition. is unrivaled by any other love and devotion. Therefore, He's the one who has created us. He's the one who's so merciful on us. When He delineates a line for us, tell us that this is the path. If we take this path, it is good for us. It is for our own expediency, for our own benefit. Why? You see, you buy any product, go to any store and buy any electronic product. You read the instruction manual to tell you what the manufacturer tells you how to use this. Instruction for use. Why? Because the manufacturer knows the best how to utilize this machine, how to utilize this instrument. Right? The same thing goes with God. He's the one who has created us. He knows what is my expediency and what is something that hurts me. What is the harmful thing and what is the useful thing. He has showed us the line, has told us this is the line, take it. Here you need to go in this way. The problem is that I have deviated. It is me who I did not listen to Him. It is me who have twisted my pathway. I didn't go straight. God has said in the Quran, says, وَأَن لَوْ اسْتَقَامُوا عَلَى الطَّرِيقَةِ لَأَسْقَيْنَاهُمْ مَاءً غَدَقًا. If those people follow on my path, on my order, they will drink clear water. Clean water meaning that they get the best of the blessings. But the problem is that it is me. You see, I believe in God. I say Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah 10 times a day in my prayers. But when it comes to trust, I don't have a trust in God. I do not trust Him. He tells me take this path, I doubt. He tells me do this, I doubt. He tells me do not do this, again I doubt. But unless someone else tells me no, you need to follow this. When I go to the doctor and the doctor writes me a prescription, tells me this tablet you need to take it right before your meal. For 2 months, I dedicate myself to take the tablet right before the meal. You tell him, why you take? Oh, the doctor has said. As if the doctor is the Holy Spirit, with all due respect to the doctors. I've seen a guy who takes the 3 tablets. One before the meal, right before the meal. One in the middle of the meal as he's eating, and one right after the meal. You tell him why? The doctor has said. Doctor is Angel Jibreel. You need to follow. You need to follow the prescription, otherwise you become froggy. You have to follow. When it comes to the doctor, we respect. When it comes to other people, doctor is good. Other people. When it comes to Dr. Phil, we follow Dr. Phil's order. Dr. Laura's order. Oprah Winfrey's order. Whatever she says, that's absolute thing. We go and read the palm readers, fortune tellers, horoscopes. How many of us every week, we commit ourselves to buy the magazines just to read the horoscope? What will happen? But for one time, listen to God. When I was a student and I used to commute between college and home, sometimes, I would listen to different, talk shows. One of them used to be Dr. Laura. I don't know if you've heard of her. At that time, she was 60 years old. Nowadays, maybe she's 40 or 35. Ladies, usually they regress in age. So when she said, she has claimed herself, she has admitted that she has divorced 7 times. 7 times. Now people would call her to ask her advice for the marriage. You see the shallow-mindedness? If her advices were good and practical, she would have saved one for herself. One for herself. But when it comes to God, when it comes to this course of Al-Baqarah and Al-Sadiq, we reject them. We don't have a trust in that. There's a story I would like to share it with you. It's a fictitious story. It's not real. It's a fiction. They say there used to be a mountain climber. This mountain climber, who was in middle-aged and very daring and, would like to explore, the joy in life. Therefore, sometimes he would take very challenging, tasks. There used to be a big mountain, close to his town that he wanted to climb and reach the summit. But he said, in order to do that, if I do it during the day, it's not a big deal. I would take the challenge. In the middle of the night, in a very cold winter, I go and do this by myself, no one else. So he went with backpack, on his back. And, the mountain climbers, they have, long ropes and nails and hammer. So as they climb, they nail they hammer the nails on the rocks, hang the rope on them. And the rope is connected to their backpack. So in case they fell, the rope catches them. So he kept climbing and climbing until he got to very close to the summit. There, it's an open air. A strong wind came and it blew him. So through him, he was, he couldn't control himself. So he was thrown in the valley, dark, cold valley. So he came all the way, was fortunate enough not to hit the ground. Yet he, was stranded in the middle where the rope just grabbed him. It was hooked in his backpack. But it was dark, very cold, freezing temperature. He could not see anything and stranded, and no one knows about him. And there, usually the phone receptions is zero. There is no, AT&T or T-Mobiles to go and put, receptors. So this guy was stranded. What does he do? He left stranded until he started calling upon God. God! Nothing. Again, he screamed, God! And then all of a sudden, God answered him. Yes, what do you want? He said, I want your help. My help? What do you want? I need to talk to you. God told him, I've been looking for you for 40 years to talk to you. Where have you been? Now you want to talk to me? He said, sorry, God. I know. I believe in you. But, things happen. Sometimes, we do some misadventures. Busy. So, what would you like me to do? Well, I want you to save me. Save my life. You want me to save your life. Have you ever trusted me that I save your life? Well, don't talk about the past. Let's talk about the future. Sorry about what has happened. Yes, I trust you. Do you really trust me? If you trust me, then cut out the rope. The rope that is, that you're hanged, just cut that. Take the knife and cut it. Am I crazy to do that? What do you think I am? He said, well, didn't you say that, you have a trust in me? He said, yeah, I have a trust in you, but not to that extent. If I cut the throat, then I will dead, completely dead. He said, well, it's up to you. If you want me to help you, I want one thing from you. Just grab the knife and cut out the rope. No, I will not do it. Sorry. Okay. If not, there is no deal. God abandons him, and he was abandoned, of course, in such cold weather. Barely he can survive for 30 minutes. After a few hours, he dies. Now his family members, they search for him. His friends first search for him until they find him. They found his body. The next day, all the headlines in the newspapers, brothers and sisters, listen to this. This is the important. This is the point. All the headlines have said this. A mountain climber has lost his life while 1 meter above the ground. 1 meter above the ground. You see where the trust goes? God is telling you, just cut the rope and you will be saved. God is telling you, follow this order. Follow. If I would not love you, I wouldn't have sent you Abraham. I haven't sent you Jesus. I haven't sent you Moses. I haven't sent you Muhammad ibn Abdullah. It is due to my love, my affection that I have sent you. But what did we do instead? We grabbed rocks and threw rocks on them. We tortured them. Imam Hussein comes, we kill him. We massacre him. We attack his family members. Not only that, while his dead body, we step on his dead body. We crush his dead body to the bones. This is a human being. Then you wonder why we get lost? Why we have so much divorces? The divorce rate is so high. So what is the answer, brothers and sisters? There is no time and I have to go very fast. What does God say after all this introduction? You see, brothers and sisters, everything is not only pertinent to marriage. Everything, there is one important rule that God has designed. That Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala. You can follow that everywhere. At work, in your home, in your study, in your prayers, in the masjid, everywhere. It's a very simple rule. God talks about it. He tells the Prophet, if you decide to do the prayers in this kind of masjid, in this kind of mosque. لَمَسْجِدٌ أُسِّسَ عَلَى التَّقْوَى أَحَقُّ أَن تَقُومَ فِيهِ. Find that masjid that is based on taqwa. What is taqwa? Piety. Fear of God. In any place, anything you want to do, put this in your mind. Fear of God. Whenever there is fear of God, do that thing. Keep fear of God in your hearts, in your prayers, in the masjid, in your work, in dealing with your spouse, in dealing with your children, in dealing with your parents and with your relatives. Keep this in mind. لَمَسْجِدٌ أُسِّسَ عَلَى التَّقْوَى. It is taqwa, brothers and sisters. Taqwa is what? Fear of God. Now, if you are a father and someone comes to you and he asks the hand of your daughter, and you know that this guy fears God, what do you wait for? If this person fears God, meaning that he's, he will become a normal guy. He would not hurt your daughter. He would not hurt himself. The entire relationship, brothers and sisters, should be based on taqwa, fear of God. When you reach that level of taqwa, then your marriage becomes successful. At that time, if you are a husband and you want to say something, you think about it. Am I treating my wife in a way that God would be disappointed with me? Or if you are a wife and you would like to do something and then you think about it, is it based on taqwa, fear of God? At that time you will see that life has transformed, has changed from a miserable kind to something that you would like, a warm family. Here are a couple points, brothers and sisters, why there are so many troubles in the families. I'm just going to point, couple of them. Number one, brothers and sisters, yes, we mature by body, biologically, but intellectually, mindfully, many of us do not mature. We take marriage as shallow. To them, you tell him, what is marriage? Tells you marriage meaning that every night we go, for example, to a restaurant and then we go to the movie theater. Marriage meaning that every occasion we exchange gifts for it. That's good. Don't think that I'm saying no. But marriage is not only this. Marriage is not that on every anniversary you make surprise a trip to you take your wife and go. Only in case you don't, then that would be a miserable life. You see, some people think that marriage meaning that wife should cook at home. If not, then that would be the biggest crime of the century. If the wife, however, for example, see that her husband doesn't bring her gift on the anniversary, then that day will be the Armageddon. It's too bad. God forbid if he forgets, for example, her birthday. They say one day, a husband has forgotten his wife's birthday. So he went and asked her, which month is your birthday? And instead of answering, she slapped him twice, meaning that it is February. So he went to his mom and told his mom. She told him, what did you do? He said, nothing. I was thankful it was not December. You see, this kind of shallow-mindedness that if he does not bring me flower, then this guy is miserable. Or if the husband says that because she didn't iron my clothes, my t-shirt, then she's a bad wife. This comes from our shallow thinking, brothers and sisters, meaning that we have not matured. The second reason, brothers and sisters, is the interference of others. It is when others interject into, the life of the couple. You see, those are mature. They get married. They always require advice. You need to advise them. As a parent, you need to give them advice. You need to tell them what is the good thing, what is the bad thing. But it doesn't mean that from the needle until the master room, the mother-in-law has to have her own written consent for every single thing in the household. For example, the wastebasket should be here. The refrigerator should be here. If they need to go for a trip, no, it should be with her consent. No. And the same thing could go with the boy. You see, someone wants to get married. Number one, he has to see if his father is happy with her cooking. If she cooks good and if his father is happy, then that's good. It is you who wants to get, she wants to get married with you, not with your parents. And the same thing goes with the wife. Some of the wives tell their husband, you are my husband, but remember, my mom is your husband too. So anything you do is checked. This kind of interference, brothers and sisters, in the newly married couple life will ruin their life. Yet, they need advice. And this advice goes to those couples, brothers and sisters. You see, your parents, they don't want to harm you. They want happiness for you. The time that you get married, when you get married with your bride, it is the best night for your parents. They're waiting for decades to see that important night, to see when you get married. You see, whenever you would ask them before, he tells them, I have only one wish. And that is just to see my wife, my son or my daughter is getting married. Any parents. You see, when you ask them, it says, I have only one thing in mind. It's just to see my children get married. So when they see you getting married, this is the best day and night for them. They don't want to hurt you when they give you pieces of advice. They want to make you happy. They want to make you successful. You see, if your life is happy, they are happy. That wedding day for the grandpa or the grandma is more happier, more joyous than the groom and the bride themselves. Especially if the groom or the bride happen to be orphans. You see, the single father or the single mother raised them with difficulty, with hardship, always keeping in mind that when they grow up, so they get married and become independent. At that day, it is the most joyous day for them. Brothers and sisters, that was the case in Ashura. The wife of Imam Hassan al-Ramla was, she had her son Al-Qasim. Al-Qasim ibn al-Hassan, in his time of the time of his father, when his father Al-Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam martyred, passed away, Al-Qasim was 1 year old. So the mother always kept in her mind how she would raise such kind of child. With how much agonies, how much hardship and difficulty she would be able to raise him. For what? So she can see his wedding. The time that he gets married. That was her dream. Always she has kept, preoccupied with that day. Therefore, even when they traveled to Karbala, you see some of the parents, they save their wedding gowns, their wedding suit for what? For their children to wear it on their wedding. So they see their children in their eyes as if they are getting married. The Ramla, the wife of Imam Hassan, did the same thing. She took the outfit of the Imam Hassan alayhi salam, to Ashura. Why? Maybe there a chance that Al-Qasim get married. And she makes him wear the turban and the outfit of his father. But that day never came. Ashura came. On that moment, in the noon of Ashura, when everybody was massacred and killed from the companions of Imam Hussein, Ramlah called upon her son, and she looked at her son and told him, don't you see your uncle is by himself alone? Now it's your time. It is your time that you will go and defend your uncle. She made him wear the turban and the outfit of Imam Hassan, his father. Now Imam al-Hussein is waiting to see his nephew. But he was thinking that when he see his nephew in that outfit, it means that it is the time for him to get married. He did not expect that Qasim would come in that outfit to tell him that I want to go and fight. Ya Aba Abdullah. The boy came, Qasim came to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam and asked him for permission. The Imam looked at him and remembered the call of his brother Imam Hassan. Imam Hassan has asked him to take care of this boy, and when he reaches the age of maturity, he makes him getting married, get him wedded. He told him, Ya Uzzu alayya ya bunay. It is so difficult for me that I will send you to the battle. You need to be saved. You need to be the legacy of your father. He said, I cannot take it anymore. I have to go and fight. He told him, if you want, just go one more time and say goodbye to your mother and the woman. He goes back. He says goodbye to them. His aunt Zainab comes and hugs him. She kisses him and tells him, Qasim, now when you go to fight, then give my salam to your mother, to my mother Zahra, and say that your daughter has been left alone in the desert of Karbala. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah, wa ala al-arwah allati hallat bifina'ik, wa anakhat birahlik. عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين ورحمة الله وبركاته. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.